Credential stopped being a proxy for performance a long time ago. You can have for one job, you could have 500 applicants. And we have a customer, 12 million applicants for 4,000 jobs. Resumes are like binary. It's a piece of paper that probably been written by some kind of AI, fraudulent candidates that don't even exist. And all of a sudden they were getting like 10,000 fake candidates that didn't exist.
I don't get that though. Why would somebody take time to post fake resumes?
They get paid for people to apply. Every time they'd say, we're going to submit this to our client, but they get paid. Everyone's a victim. The sourcing company is a victim, the client's a victim, and somebody else made off with the money. In the last about 20 years, we've been doing corporate and educational training in languages. And at some point, we had a client using our platforms to evaluate candidates in high volume hiring. So they could record all these candidates who would have scenario based, and they would go in and listen to them, tell them, and figure out who was good. And at that point, says we should automate this instead of using language assessments. I think soft skills, critical thinking skills are just as important, if not more important. And it's HiringBranch.
Well, you're right, though. I mean, for years, hiring has been focused on credentials and experience, and going way back. And now we are seeing a huge shift towards the skills-based hiring, and especially on the soft skills side, more so now over the last maybe year or so. What do you think is driving this shift across all these different industries right now?
Yeah, I think probably a couple of them. One of them, there's something called credential inflation is real. So you're looking at candidates on paper, they all look the same. They don't tell you how they perform. So even though you may know Excel or Python, it doesn't tell you how well you do. And I think the other one is like automation. And I think historically, automation is now doing all the simple tasks. Look, if you're looking at customer service or sales and you're needing much more sophisticated people skills or soft skills to deal with real issues and to have the people they can interact with. Automation has taken away the simple stuff, and we need humans who have much better relational skills. And I think that's what's really driving the change.
That's so true. Which industries do you think are currently kind of leading the adoption of all this change in what types of skills are needed?
In the actual employment, we still see people being hired. There hasn't been a really big impact as much as that you would think. Where I think that there's a really huge impact is really in the software world, where developers, we're hearing from people like Stanford University that recent graduates can't get a job out of computer science because I think the tools that are being developed are really accelerating development so quickly. And the reason for that is because writing code is based on previous knowledge, and LLMs and AI is really good at finding that previous knowledge really quickly and adapting to your scenario. So there is a big impact, I believe in that. But we're hearing it in law firms with new tools that are being developed. So it is a broad, but is it impacting employment? That this, I think we'd be a fool not to think that it will have it. But I think over time, these new jobs will be repurposed. Like every single major technological shift in the world, the industrial age, all these people who used to work in factories, says that's it, we won't need them. But reality, the impact in the UK and in the States, there were more people working in factories, but they weren't doing those traditional jobs. So I think we're in that space right now.
You're right, and you going back on something you said a few minutes ago, the technical and the hard skills are changing so quickly. There is kind of more of this emphasis now on soft skills, right? But which soft skills do you think are, and I'm kind of speaking in generalities here, obviously, but which soft skills do you think are like really being highlighted and focused on right now?
Yeah, I think that that is a great question. So we work with companies that hire for charities. So they raise money for charities like Doctors Without Borders, the Red Cross. You would assume that if you were a hiring manager, that if I'm raising money for people who are starving in Africa somewhere, that you want highly empathetic agents to be able to tell the story. These are real needs, real crises. But the reality when it comes to performance, empathy is an important skill because you want to be able them to understand what the situation of the reality, to be able to have people give to these causes. The most important skills were fluency, building rapport, and handling objections. So empathy was an important one to have, but when you're looking at actual for people to actually give money, agents or people we call them agents with those skills that you could hire consistently were leading to better outcomes. And interesting enough, our hypothesis was wrong. The customer's hypothesis was wrong, but using a really deep science and using a linguistic template, then you were. So you can do this across multiple industry, including healthcare, including customer service, including sales. Like any industry has it, and it's not one soft skill; it's a combination of soft skills. So it's really fascinating, like what and the field is still evolving in interesting ways. And that's the field of expertise that we've been developing for 20 years.
That is amazing. It really is. And like you said, it would translate then across multiple industries, these particular soft skills.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And even in healthcare, there's lots of research that have said you to get better patient outcomes, you need to apply the right procedure, but more importantly, you need to be able to talk to your patient and make him feel that someone is listening to them to how the pain they're in, the situation. And lots of studies have been done. If your healthcare providers have the right soft skills, then that patient has a quicker recovery time and better outcome. And it has nothing to do with the medication, the procedure, the operation. It's really like that plus using soft skills, you're going to get better outcome.
Yeah, that's true though. I mean, I can just think of myself as a patient. I recall going to a doctor's office several months ago, and I just didn't like the staff. I didn't like the doctor. So I switched and went to a different one. I guess we are looking at soft skills and bedside manner or chair-side manner if you go to a dentist. So those terms have been around for a long time. So it's interesting that they're now kind of coming to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, and they have been. They've been around for many, many decades, but how to action them has always been like there's articles in Harvard Business Review. You hire for better soft skills, you'll get better outcomes. It's been known. Like it's this is nothing new, but it's been difficult to action because probably that the interview process dates back hundreds of years. Uh, like all these procedures, these legacy procedures, which really don't correlate to performance. Like it's interesting, and I think now they're becoming more important. My doctor, when we are talking about, I've had the same doctor for over 30 years, and he has incredible soft skill. And unfortunately, he retired. So I've got
Oh, I hate
so
when they do
like,
that.
yes, yes, I said yes, and it's like, oh my god, I got to find a new one with the same skills.
I know. I know. We've been through that too. It's like, no, you can't retire. Not yet.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the application funnel. Now, do you see applicant tracking systems kind of adding in soft skills as some of their criteria more than they used to?
Yeah, I think applicant tracking system. We work with a number of customers who've realized that this is really important. The applicant tracking system, their main when they came out is really it was really to organize the application process, not evaluate them. And over time, we're seeing that with one click apply. Like, you can have for one job, you could have 500 applicants. And we have a customer, 12 million applicants for 4,000 jobs. Like, how do you do that? And I think ATSs have not been built to that. And they've tried to adapt by resume using AI to shift through resumes, but it's still a guesswork. Resumes are like binary. It's a piece of paper that probably been written by some kind of AI, and it's difficult to evaluate. The focus of soft skill is really managerial and customer facing jobs. It's not C suite. So experience. What does the experience mean? And I think that the ATS has not been built to that around that. And really, the other thing is that you're getting all these candidates with not a lot of intent to actually get the job. So therefore, I think that there's a huge burden, enormous burden finding for TA to screen them differently. So they have to really adapt it differently from what they're doing. And I think by using a soft skills, automated soft skills approach, where you put the candidate in the role and they actually get to demonstrate their skills, really gives you a good idea of the skills of that person and who to interview. So it's like a leg up. And then the CV takes a second phase. Like it's once you've gone through the platform, you want to interview an operational interview, then the CV is like, okay, well, let's verify that what the experience this candidate or their cultural fit. But yeah, I think ATSs like, really have to adapt and really become a tool that better evaluates candidates for the skills they really have. So
What you mentioned though that there's some candidates who are applying who aren't even really interested in the position. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, where
I mean, why would they apply?
I think that what's happened is that with these one-click apply, so these tools go out and they look for all these jobs. They'll modify your CV or resume on the fly and apply, regardless of geography requirements. So they have no intent of doing. And the other issue we're seeing a lot of is fraudulent candidates that don't even exist. So I was talking to one of my colleagues. They work with a very large pharmaceutical company, not pharmaceutical drugstore in the States, and they're sourcing. And all of a sudden, they were getting like 10,000 fake candidates that didn't exist that were created by some kind of AI. So it costs everybody money, and by the when you come to interview, they don't exist. So there has to be other layers to be able to detect are these people real or not.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point they're going to get found out, right? And then
They
they're
get
going to
find out.
lose the account altogether.
They do, yeah, and everyone's a victim. The sourcing company is a victim, the client's a victim, and somebody else made off with the money. And it's like a new type of scam. You have these telephone scams. This is just a different type of scam now. So not only do you have to find better ways to screen to make sure that these are real people. And the only way you can do that is by getting in. There's lots of ways, but what we do is by getting into the job. It's a real person. You actually have to do it. It's measured. There's proctoring built in, and more like this is based around that.
Oh my stars. Okay. I guess I haven't heard at this level that this is such a huge problem and that there's so many companies that are getting paid, number one, to submit resumes. I still don't get why they have to understand that their time is limited. So maybe they're just saying, okay, we'll do it until we get caught, run away with the money, and then we're
They're
good.
all scams. They're absolute scams. They're just
What?
scams. They're just scams. Yeah. Very difficult to catch. And so now new technology is always being, it's a cat and mouse. It's like the old scam, the phone scams. Now we have the iPhones and telephones have adapted this scam call. So everyone has to adapt. Like there's always people are not very honest players who are trying to make money somehow.
So when we spoke previously, Stefan, you mentioned to me that Hiring Branch screens all candidates for your clients, screens all applicants that come in and post or apply for positions. Tell me why we need to screen every candidate then. But there's other reasons though to screen every candidate.
Yeah, I think the philosophy that we have, why we do this, is really because we know that the interview is time consuming, even though time consuming tends to be biased. There's lots of articles about Ken Wheeler. So why are we worried about AI when humans in themselves are more biased? Talent acquisition does not have time to look at the number of candidates to evaluate. And we hear a lot of our customers, they're hiring for five. Let's say they have a retail store, they're hiring for five positions. They'll easily get 400 CVs. So the cost to evaluate those, and not only that, find the ones that have the right skills, the soft skills. And we know from our studies with our global enterprise clients that only about 30% of your candidate pool will have the right soft skills. So the philosophy we have is that, but we put the candidate in the role where they talk to a virtual customer, they talk or write, mostly write, and they exchange with them. So they take difficult questions, really based around the role. So if you're in healthcare or retail or customer service or sales, and the AI evaluates on multiple fronts, critical thinking skills, language skills, soft skills, all three. And then these algorithms that have been benchmarked against your KPIs, your performance, will tell you who the candidates have the skills. And this is very different approach compared to like an AI interviewer tool, which is a light screen. This is actually a very deep screen. So I think why you screen everybody, because you want to find those diamonds in a rough. Who does not want high quality employees? And if you only screen 10%, then your 90% don't even get a chance.
There are a lot of candidates out there who, first of all, don't even know how to write a resume. And I've always said the candidates who interview the best and write the best resumes are generally people who have been on job searches more than once or more frequently. People who have been working for companies for 15, 20 years, you ask them for a resume, they're saying, well, my resume is like 15, 20 years old. I need to go and update it. And then they send it to you and that looks horrible. The best candidates are often the worst interviewers and the worst resume writers.
Yeah, no, and I think that From the experience we've had, we hired someone. The team we hire for customer service goes through our platform. We hired someone that I don't think if we had done an interview first, we would have hired. But he was really incredible. He scored really well, and then he ended up being a great employee. He's been with us for a long time. And I think to your point, this is very accurate. Some people are intimidated by the interview process. I once heard the quote is that the interview process is an unnatural process done by two semi-consenting adults. And really it's like it's like
Okay, I love that. That's good. That's a good one.
it's not a very fair exchange. So you can see why it could be intimidated. And ironically, one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur because I was so intimidated by being interviewed and evaluated. So I said it would be easier to be an entrepreneur. My God, was I ever wrong?
Yeah.
I'm constantly being interviewed. But anyway, but yeah, to your point, it's true. Like some people interview well and perform poorly, and vice versa. And I think you need a different way to evaluate candidates for the real skills.
So you mentioned some of the skills categories, I guess, that we should focus on, like like relational or cognitive teamwork, that type of thing. So tell me how that works then with your screening service. I mean, so you're screening every single applicant for the same skills that I'm talking about, communication, language, adaptability, that type of thing. So they're all getting screened for that, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we will map the skills to the role from our benchmarks that we have globally. So be it in sales or healthcare. So, and again, it's not one skill. So we're not going to screen, okay, now we're going to screen for empathy. Now we're going to ask you an active listening question. No, it is a conversation that you have. And the technology evaluates all these skills in real time critical thinking, language fluency, and it's a plethora of soft skills, but we only choose the ones, and then they're regrouped into categories. And in our platform, we call them quality focus and customer focus. And typically, those are the ones that we've benchmarked, and we know for your role that are going to perform. So if they score well in those categories, then we think that they're worth interviewing. Or in cases we have one of the largest employers in the world. In many cases, they don't even do interviews. They will do operational interviews for cultural fit because after benchmarking it A and B, and it allows the hiring managers or recruiters to really repurpose their skills. They're hiring typically it varies. We have a sales organization that deployed our platform. The most interesting, they were the first one. So this was early on. We just designed a better platform to evaluate these skills. And they said, oh, by the way, we stopped interviewing in sales, which was really like, what do you mean you don't introduce this? Yeah, we just do an operational interview. We did the A/B testing, and we realized that initial phone screens, second interview, third interview, group interview, your platform does a better job. The second thing after working for them 6 months is that their closing of business by these agents who had gone through our platform that had the skills increased by 10%. So consistently using science-based deep science, we were able, because we mapped them to their performance KPIs, we found out the skills, and we just re-injected that into the AI that evaluates at the top of the funnel. And now they just do an operational interviews with people who perform. And we have another one. Yeah. So it's pretty fascinating.
So what kind of interviews are these? Are these your services asking them questions and then they're answering them verbally, or are these written responses to written questions?
The platform does a combination, so we can do text to text, speech to text, any combination. More and more, as AI has taken over a lot of the text stuff, the voice process becomes more important. So typically, you either read a scenario or you listen to a customer, and it's like carrying conversation with a customer. Like I just went to, let's say it's a telco question. I just went to your store downtown and I spoke to Bobby, and he sold me this telephone. The internet doesn't work. I think this is awful. I want to quit your company. And you, as a candidate, would have to respond. There's no correct answer. But the thing we want you to figure out, what are the important things in this conversation? Is it because they bought a phone? Is it because they bought it downtown from Bobby? And or they want to quit the company? No, the problem is that they bought a phone and it doesn't do what they wanted to. The internet doesn't work. So it says, oh, I can understand that having the internet phone not having may be very frustrating. Let me see if I can help you and talk to my resources and make sure that that service is available. So it's identifying. So it's within that, we're going to say active listening. Are you listening? It could be probing questions, could be building rapport. And we have to realize, especially in outside of healthcare, every job is turned into a customer service and sales job because we're trying to, yeah. So that is what kind of, you just answer questions of that nature. It could be written, it could be spoken.
I remember working for a company when behavioral assessments were becoming like a really important part of our interview process. It kind of sounds a little bit like this. Behavioral assessments that like you said kind of created some scenarios, right? And then you were going to draw from the responses what the skills were, the soft skills, and also behavioral skills of the candidate.
Yeah, and I with the customers that we have typically are using these cognitive behavior or psychometric assessments. They're all multiple choice. So you have predetermined answers, and they'll ask you the same questions a different way to make sure that you're not gaming the system. So these are binary. You only have a few inputs to evaluate a human. But a human has many. We can speak, we can listen, we have body language, we have these skills that we've developed, how to handle conflict. Maybe you had a difficult sibling. You don't know. You don't know. You maybe you're a mother and you've raised five kids and their friends and you have pretty good soft skills. This is what we evaluate. It's not knowledge based. It's really we put you in a situation and we see how you adapt. And you express yourself, and we measure hundreds and hundreds of metrics to make a really accurate profile, deep profile of that candidate.
Right. And somebody with that many kids probably has good leadership skills too.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up in a time where there was like really big families and the mothers were like, I mean, little drill sergeants. So I yeah. So I go back to thinking about that.
Yeah.
So it
I I have three kids, and it's a large modern family because we don't have these, but my
yeah,
wife has leadership skills.
I love it. I mean, that's great. Yeah, maybe those are some of the soft skill questions we should be including. But then we like, no, no, you're violating all sorts of laws and ethics. So now what about AI and candidate preparedness? Because I know that about 10, 12 years ago, when HireVue first started, remember HireVue? When they first started, people were just petrified to do any kind of digital interview or automated interview. Some of the questions were verbal, like you were talking about, some of them were written. But people were just more afraid of the digital aspect of it than speaking with somebody one on one. What kind of candidate preparedness, I guess, are we looking at right now?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting. The video aspect is very intimidating, and what we've learned, and I think other companies too. I'm not going to mention it, but there are very few visual cues that correlate to quality employees. People are all different there, but it's really about how you express yourself, the soft skills you use, and that is really the difference. And in our platform, we don't use video. We only video can be evaluated by the recruiter for other reasons, whatever they want. But in our platform, this is not a metric. Really, the metrics are really about how you interact with another candidate. And the interesting thing about it is that the latest platform we've developed, the candidates really appreciate ironically the authentic nature of what we're doing, and it sets the candidate expectation. Our largest customer, again, this is what they like most because the role is really based on the work you're going to be doing. It's not like generic. It's very focused, and it sets expectations. So they know exactly if you're going to be in collections or financial ops, it's difficult to talk to someone who's delinquent on their credit card. And how do you make that person at ease and get them to some kind of agreement is difficult. Or scams, or if you're in healthcare, we work with healthcare insurance providers where their kid is in an accident and they're stuck, and they want to make sure that their kid is well taken care of, or their husband, or their whatever it may be. And you need the great soft skills for that. So I think the video element is less important, and it's really about communication, and candidates really appreciate that, and they feel like it's authentic, which is ironic. Like this is the latest research for the last month. They feel it's an authentic, even though they're talking to an AI robot, it is an authentic experience that sets candidate expectations. And the other thing that recently is that the completion rate has started going up. Candidates like the fact that they're being assessed fairly. This is a fair assessment of my skills. And you can report back of the skills they have. They don't have what they need to work on. It's not a black box. So that's really fascinating.
Well, and also, I mean, how many ATS companies have run into issues with biases, right? So I can see where if there is a really good screening service then that's interviewing candidates, they'll be able to understand from the way they're being interviewed that this is a lot more fair to your point and less biased. Because I mean, there are a number of ATS companies have had to go back to the drawing board because of the biases. And that's not even speaking with the candidate. That's just reviewing resumes, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We've seen a few lawsuits recently, and there video interview tools. Again, the video have been sued. There's another one that going into someone's background without their permission is being used. I think life is really about as a human, as humans evolve, you want to be evaluated with the skills you have today and what you and whatever it may be through travel, through education, through work. You want a fair share of a job. So I think that's the key. And more importantly, you know mentioned bias. Our platform goes through bias audits, third party bias audits every year, and every year we pass those bias audits, be it from your background, your race, where you're from. It doesn't matter. It's completely unbiased.
wow. Going back to the ATS companies, do you think the ATS platforms today are even prepared to support some of the skills-based screening that's coming up right now?
Yeah, I think that they're all adapting. There's been, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been many acquisitions in this space. They're trying to get in this space. They're acquiring lots of AI interview tools and stuff like that. But we're seeing more and more like you know they can adapt, but the more and more important, what there has to be accountability, and people more are looking for quality of hire. And I think this is where there's still a bit of it's a bit of a black hole that we need to focus on quality of hire to meet the company's business objectives and that individual's objectives too. Okay, it's not a one-way street, and that this has to be based around the role and type of work you're doing. And I think that this is where the opportunity lies. We're screening everybody at the top of the funnel with AI and interview tool. It's digitized the legacy process, but you need to have more of a science-based approach to being able to find those candidates.
And I would imagine too that doing this type of screening and this type of interview process operationally will create then better pathways to employee retention.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, attention again. We have another customer, absenteeism. So you're looking at a large organization. So yes, the retention we work with Bell. It's like it's published pace that we improve retention to less than 10% in 90 days. But another type of customer we have again, it reduced absenteeism. So and the reason behind that is that and they were doing difficult jobs. So it was like you're talking to it was every customer interaction was a difficult customer interaction. They had to solve complicated problems, and you can imagine that someone you hire using just a standard language assessment or behavioral, you're talking to someone who be aggressive or upset. Um, that using our approach, we were able to match those skills and they had the skills to deal with that. So the candidates knew what kind of role they were getting involved in. And so forth, they showed up for work and the savings just on that metric, they're very large. That metric paid for the solution. Forget about retention, forget about reach. Just that metric made a big difference.
That's amazing. It really is. And it's something that you probably hadn't even thought about, you know? I mean, when you're putting this together, this benefit all of a sudden pops up. It's like, oh, there's, yeah, less absentee.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think all these benefits, like reducing or eliminating initial interviews, absenteeism, we thought we would improve retention and customers. We didn't think about all these other things.
Wow, no
Yeah,
kidding. So if companies want to truly then adopt these skills-based hiring practices, what operational changes are they going to have to make in their recruiting process?
yeah. I think like the what we've so I tell you what's happening. A lot of departments are going. They're looking at skills taxonomies. They're looking at internally what skills do I need to hire for a nurse or a manager or this, and then trying to break it down. The challenge we see with that is that we will work with those customers, but the challenge we see with that is many times this has been based on paper or manager review. And as we know, is that CVs are not a good indication, and these skills change all the time. And manager reviews, it's difficult to do. And this goes into a system, and then you match those skills. You've noticed that it hasn't been sometimes successful. What we like about the way we approach it is that you're measuring it by an impartial tool that evaluates the real skills of that candidate. And using that, you will get findings that are not obvious. Back to that fundraising case where we need empathy. So if you're looking on paper, you're looking at people empathetic who work for charities or did some charity work, and you're hiring for those people. Well, you're trying to raise money. It may not be the right skill. So it's every customer we go to where we approach this, it's always fascinating that the skills that you need to hire for are not what we thought and what they thought. So I think you need to have more of like an approach by using an impartial tool or service tool, really unbiased tool to evaluate the real skills to get the outcomes and align yourselves around that. And the approach works really well for internal and external customers, managerial, even managers. It works really well. So using that kind of approach.
So let's talk about the impact on the TA professional as we move forward with all of this automation now. How is this going to change the role of the TA practitioner moving forward, doing this type of automated screening?
Yeah, I think I've got so many great examples. I think first of all, like like as I told my developer team, so we don't have a lot of TA people, it says elevates your role. If you're using a screening technology or it'll elevate result if you let it. So we work with companies that the screening burden was so high. We have some people who have hundreds of CVs to evaluate, resumes to evaluate on a daily basis. They're in a meeting or a podcast, they're flipping through paper. And how I don't know how efficient that is. All of a sudden, that it frees you up to actually do work that is more building relation, advising hiring managers, shaping how the organizer thinks about talent. So the recruits who thrive become talent strategists, not resume screeners. So it really changes your job, just like the industrial age. People who work in the factory placing bolts, now it's an odd. It really changes your role and becomes more of a knowledge and more strategic and better impact for the company. So I think whatever you do, you have to adopt these tools. I was reading like if you hire a junior programmer doesn't have the knowledge and they're using these coding tools, it won't make them much better. Like they have to improve their knowledge. And I think that the more knowledge you have, the more as a recruiter, the more you can drive these tools to get the outcomes you want.
Well, but that leads me to my next question then. So, what are the TA practitioners and leaders and HR leaders as well? What do they need to do internally to help their executive leadership teams understand and the need for this type of support?
Yeah, I think that the leadership teams, if they're anything of with the people we work with, they're very ROI driven. So one of the big largest telco, their metric the CEO wanted, they have about 20,000 contact center agents around the world. He wanted to improve retention because he knew that if he kept someone uh, 3 months, kept them a year, the knowledge they acquired, the money they invest will lead to better customer outcomes. And I think that by using these tools, you can really align them to business outcomes. So the ROI, like all these projects we do, is anywhere between 300, 500,000%. So I think that if you empower your leadership, okay, let's align with outcomes. What kind of outcomes do we want for our hospital or behavioral therapy clinic? Why do we have such high turnover? Like turnover, we hear this all over. We have turnover, turnover, turnover. Well, it's possible that you're hiring the wrong person. There's always something, but one of them is that the premise that when we work with these customers is that you're simply hiring the wrong person. And again, back to one of the largest customers we work with, was the premise. They had used language cognitive interviews and they still had a buy hire rate. And using a different approach, we were able to reduce that by 90%. And then the communication problem disappears. And now, okay, now we need to optimize. So I think that it's like a factory. You like a factory, you want to optimize these tools to produce effectively quality parts. Then HR leaders and leadership have to think about we need to support these employees, hire employees that have the skills and give them the skills that they may not have because the insight that you get by using this approach is very in depth.
Hmm. Yep, it makes sense. Definitely. Especially like we were saying earlier with all of the fraudulent resumes that are coming through now and the scams. I mean, yeah, I guess I didn't realize how how many scams there are until this conversation. Geez, I mean, you're hearing about it more and more, but I had no idea that people were actually making money scamming this
Yeah,
way. So I think
we
that
had
that's an important factor.
we had someone apply for a job and this person was so impressive and knowledgeable that we were going to hire him. But then at that point, I looked into his CV and I realized that he was outsourcing the work to somewhere else. So he was getting, it was a very high level job and paid very well, but he was just outsourcing it to other people and we didn't hire him. But I've heard this many, many times, especially now we have 95% remote work. So we've hired some other people at two, three jobs and never attended meetings. Why do you not attend meetings? It is a problem. Like, so we have to have great background checks and great ways to verify they have the right skills.
So tell me, Safane, do you think that we're at risk though of letting automation replace judgment in hiring? Or do you think technology can actually help us
Mm,
make more human decisions?
yeah, I think that the technology works really well at the top of the funnel, but I think at the end of the day, it always relies on the hiring teams, recruiters to make the final decision. What it does consistently is that it finds you candidates who have the right skills for the job, but it's still up to the hiring managers and people to really be able to figure out if they're a good fit. It just simplifies their job. It's like people thought, oh yeah, people thought that when Microsoft Word came out, that's it. We don't need no one needs to, no one needs to, we don't need secretaries or people to work to type anymore. But that's not true. It democratized, everyone can write now. And I think that AI and what we're doing is the same thing. It just changes your skill level. It allows you to do your job more effectively. It allows you to get better outcomes. So I think we can never ever outsource your credit. The what humans have compared to the AI, and I was reading a podcast about AGI. This is still not out yet, but what humans have is that their LLMs are very good about the past. They know everything about the past. So you ask them something, they'll look in the past code or thought leaderships, and they'll come up with something. But when it comes for forward thinking and creative work, then this is the strength of the human. So when you're hiring for the needs of the company going forward. So I think that the humans has to have a very important. I don't think I would ever outsource the whole tech stack to an AI robot to make decisions.
No, no. So let's fast forward 5 years then. Okay, what do you think the best companies will be doing differently when it
Yeah.
comes
So
to evaluating talent?
yeah, I think that it's like every world. I think that AI will get much, much better. They will be optimizing it. I think that where there's so depending the field that we work in is like there's a feedback loop. I can see a future where recruitment and training L&D and operations or winning the job become more aligned. I can see tools that are constantly measuring and able to evaluate and also refeeding these systems back into the hiring process, and the TA leaders, the managers become orchestration. Like you're really trying to optimize this performance engine, and we have more data now. Now, what's happening now is that I don't know if you've noticed, but we have so much data that we don't even know what to do. Every call it's recorded, and there's insight, and but
It's
it's only looking
overwhelming.
all the time. So I think that we're seeing more and more. Will entry level jobs be will they change? Absolutely. You'd be blind not to see that more and more customer service will be eliminated. But I think that when people call, like, and a lot of people still like to call, they like there's the human connection is so important. I don't see that changing. I don't.
No,
And I
I
think
I
that's
don't
coming
either.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
And another quick question that just came up for me, talking about how this is going to expand and extend out across, I mean, just different organizations and industries. What about at the school level, interviewing students? I mean, are we going to see this actually kind of move in that direction as well? Where we have, there's a lot of career fairs still. A lot of companies go to career fairs at universities. Are we going to start using this type of technology, you think, to screen new students who are, or I should say, early to career students?
Yeah. I like. There's two. I think there's two questions, and I'm gonna go back to the education one. But yes, we're already seeing it like early career or even post pre-career, finding out what you're good and not good at by using AI screeners will be very useful. The and I think it's Mark Andreessen. Don't quote me on this, but he said the one of the advantage of AI and like all these LLMs is that it allows every student to have a private tutor, and I think this was an interesting take. I have kids, two in university level, one in high school, and they use it. One of them is studying math and finance, and he's in advanced honors math. It's complicated, and it is really a mentor for him. Like, so whenever he gets challenging questions, he can ask it and help him explain it. And my daughter does the same thing. So I think there's some really great benefits. Now, if you're using to do your papers, this is not going to work. But I think educate.
And yeah, and the teachers and professors are becoming quite keen to, yeah, the papers that are being written by AI. Well, I'm just thinking though, I'm just thinking about students though who are also not sure what they wanna do, and talk about having this type of technology mentor them and maybe help them to align on what they wanna do when they finish school. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think, and especially now, I think I have a very focused. I have a daughter who's trying to graduate, not sure what she wants to do, but I think that it is a period of transition, and I think these tools can help you formulate that. But if I have advice to give anybody, is that you need to know how these Claude works, and you need to know how ChatGPT works. You need to be able to embrace it, to really empower whatever the future holds. And a lot of these AIs will help you figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at. We've been asked to do a project is that especially for that in education, giving them some insight of what the skills they have. But without a doubt, I think the human skills, people skills, communication skills are the skills of the future. Technical skills are no they change so quickly. And I think that if I had to focus with my anybody's like you develop your critical thinking skills, make sure you can identify stuff. Do you believe everything you read? Make sure you have good critical thinking skills and deduction skills and how to communicate. Go talk, pick up the phone and talk to people.
Well, and I think too, we have the trades now, industries that are employing more people, bringing on and training more people, providing apprenticeship programs. A lot of young people are moving in that direction. There was one young lady that I spoke to recently. She had just graduated from high school. Instead of going to college, she is doing her testing to join the fire department. She wants to be a fire chief. When people are maybe even at the high school level, are we going to start using this type of automation, to help people decide, do I want to go to college? Do I want to go into the trades? Where am I going to go from here? So we can like kind of like move the needle on this, I think, all the way back to high school. There's a lot to choose from. I think this is a great conversation. I'm very optimistic about it. I really appreciate your input here. This is and your feedback. I just gosh, I'm in awe of some of the conversation we've had here.
Yeah, well, it's exciting. It's always exciting to talk about what's happening. And every time I present it, I have to refresh my knowledge because it's changing so quickly. If your growth mindset and you got those skills, I think it's an exciting time and that everyone should really just hop on it and learn as much as you can.